listening to the Piercing Wizard podcast, and I'm your host, Ryan Willett. I'm a professional body piercer with 20 years experience. I travel around the world teaching technique and safety classes, and I'm a member of the Association of Professional Piercers. Listen in as I talk to my friends and colleagues about our industry so we can all stay sharp. Hi everybody, welcome back to another Piercing Wizard podcast. I just got back from the BMXNet conference in Berlin.
And boy, are your arms tired.
Hey-o. Just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who helped put on that conference. So it was a massive year. I think it was the 20th BMXNet. Huge. I've never seen more people at a BMXNet. I think it was like 1,000 attendees, which is kind of like what the APP conference numbers were, like in recent years. Over 90 instructors, and I don't even know how many hundreds of classes. So massive event, really impressive, especially with such a small team, like really hardworking team. So thank you so much to Stefan and Jens and Matt and Andrea and everybody who put in the work at BMXNet this year. It's very much appreciated, and I love the community. But I am back now with my lovely wife, who is you.
Hello.
Hi.
So for this episode, for those that aren't familiar, from time to time, I'll make a little post or reel about an issue, usually just something that has annoyed me on social media. And there were a couple of things that came up recently that I was chatting to Ryan about and kind of thought, well, I could make a little post about these things, or maybe we could chat about them a little bit more in depth. And that might be an interesting conversation. So we have a couple of topics today that we're going to talk about that are both very relevant current topics, and both issues that I think are going to continue to pop up over this next 1 to 2 years. I think we're going to start seeing both of these issues coming into the studio more. So hopefully it's helpful to have a little chat about them.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Lola, and I want to talk more about it. But before we do, I want to talk about dicks.
What else is new?
I've got a new video on Patreon about apodravia piercings, and that's one of those. It's a subject where I can't really advertise it, so it's difficult to kind of put it out there and let people know when I have genital piercing content because, the algorithm, nobody likes to have fun on the internet. So check it out if you're interested. Apodravia piercings, that's a vertical piercing through the head of the penis. I would consider it to be pretty complicated, but I've got a video showing you how I perform it with a modified needle, how I select the jewelry sizing, talking a little bit about issues related to foreskin, and a lot of other really handy information all about apodravia piercing. So if you're curious, if you've done one before, never done one before, if you want to see the video, it's available now at patreon.com/RyanPBA.
Great. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
How do we transition back into not dicks?
I mean, if you figure it out, tell me how,
All right. So from our conversations, like sometimes we struggle to come up with a podcast episode. Lola had some ideas that she was going to use for social media, but I whined and convinced her to do it as a podcast instead, because I'm interested to hear like the long version of your thought. When you do like a reel, it's like a 1 minute version of the thought. So I thought that we could kind of stretch them out a little bit, give them some space to breathe. You saw a post on social media that put the issue of recording piercings and where the boundaries could be for that. So why don't you kind of start off on this one?
Right. So I saw a post by a piercer called Leanne Thompson-Hill, just to credit her with the inspiration. And they were raising awareness of something they had seen, which was footage of a piercing client leaving a piercing studio with their 2 daughters. And they were saying, we went in, we got these piercings done. We were told not to film, but we secretly filmed anyway. And then they showed the footage. And everything was fine. I mean, as far as I can see, like there was nothing happening in the footage that was concerning or probably.
Scandalous.
Right, nothing like that. It was just footage of the piercing. And it was shared in this very offhand, they told us no, but we did it anyway kind of way. And it actually made me really, really angry, which is, as you know...
That's very unlike you.
Is so unlike me with my temperament. And I think it's because it shouldn't have bothered me, but like it did bother me in this weird deep way, because when I saw those two young people that were with their parent, the first thought I had in my head was, those are the kids that are going to end up put on fucking no-fly lists because they don't listen to the flight attendant on the plane. Like, they're the kids whose parents are like, everyone, consent matters, but not if it's at the expense of something that you want to do. Like, it just jumped out at me as such a, I don't know, such a strange thing to teach your kids about behavior, that when someone says no to something that's a reasonable thing, that's a personal boundary they don't want violated,
Just do
that
it, but do it sneaky.
it's actually fine to just ignore them. And the other thing it made me think of, and I don't know if you'll relate to this in the same way, I know that a lot of other people will though, it's like when someone touches your hair without your permission, it's like, well, I wasn't doing anything bad, or I was just trying to be nice. It's the same spark. It comes from the same place deep down that's like, I can kind of just do what I want because I don't, I know I don't have any ill intent. And so people convince themselves that the boundaries don't matter. So it was just like, it was one of those little things that I was like, that fucking sucks that they did that. And then it kind of went from that to me realizing that this is going to be an ongoing and much bigger issue because of the whole meta glasses thing and all the new ways there are to secretly record, is that we're probably going to see more of these situations where someone says, "Oh, no filming, please," and then their wishes are disregarded. And you might think, "Oh, who cares? As long as nobody was hurt, nothing bad happened. What's the big deal?" But like, anytime our consent is eroded in a way that we used to have and now don't have, that's like an alarming thing to me.
Yeah, so I would want to get it out of the way early in a conversation like this, like the big obvious thing that like I'm constantly recording piercings that I do, because that's a big part of what I do with Patreon, .com/RyanPBA. But the big thing is it's explicit consent. When a person comes in for a piercing and it's a variation or something that I think would be beneficial to capture for educational purposes, the first thing I do is I ask if they would be comfortable with it first. So it's, I do a lot of education for other piercers. Would you be comfortable if I captured any video or pictures while I'm performing your piercing? And like they have to like stop and think about it, take a minute and think about it, because I don't want them to feel pressured. I'm not going to wait until we get into the piercing area and I'm like, putting on gloves and be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to turn my camera on if you don't mind. I ask them up front, I ask them explicitly, and I also give them plenty of time to say I've changed my mind. So I say like, if this is something that if you feel like it's invasive or if you feel like it's uncomfortable in any way, at any moment you can just say, please turn the camera off, and I will. So like there's a really important consent issue there. And like if someone was recording me without my consent, it would just feel really icky. I think like you even get those moments where you're walking around in maybe a public space and people are doing like selfies and things like in tourist type scenarios, and like I find myself avoiding walking through the path of their camera or something because it just feels so invasive. Like I don't want to be, like you say, like I don't want to be seen sometimes. So like I'm there to perform the piercing. I'm not there to generate content for the client. If they want to record something, they need to ask in advance and get my consent. But I actually don't permit clients to record piercings. So we could talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, I'm the same in my studio. It's always been, no phones out. I'm absolutely fine with it if people want to take before and after,
Yeah.
to document. That's no problem for me at all. But there are several reasons why filming in a space, especially filming where it's not consensual on both parts, isn't always a great idea. But for me, it also comes back to the point where it doesn't actually matter what the reason is, because no means no. So it's not like no means no, but you have to convince me and explain and give me a really good reason. As a customer, you're in the position where when you walk into a business, you can say, I want to film this. It is important for me that I film this while it's happening to me. And if they say, oh, we don't offer that, sorry, the onus is then on you to find a studio that meets your needs, not to say, yeah, those terms are fine, and then just like lie and do it anyway. That's the bit that I found quite frustrating and upsetting, because consent is just so important to us in the studio space. Like, a client's no really means something to me.
Right.
And could you imagine a reality in which a client said, no, thanks, I'd rather not be filmed, and you secretly filmed them? That would unquestionably be a horrendous violation, potentially a criminal violation. It would be this enormous thing that we would unquestionably agree was inappropriate. But when you reverse those roles, the only difference is one person is paying. One person is paying the other. And so when we look at it through that lens, you can understand why some people are like, well, you know, I paid and therefore I should get the benefit of behaving however I want in this situation. But you're not buying consent and permission to break somebody's
Boundaries.
to violate somebody's boundaries, just the same as you're not buying permission to touch their hair or grab their arms or ask them invasive questions. You're not buying permission to do that stuff. You're paying for a service. They're rendering the service. If they say, no thanks, I would rather that we didn't do X, Y, or Z, you actually have the option to decline the service if that doesn't meet your needs, you know? So it's the deception of it. And the erosion of that consent, the violation of that consent in a space where consent means so much to us, that I think really just bothered me.
So, like, I think that there are some really valid reasons why a piercer would decline a client recording. So, like, I've declined any client phones really at all. So it's like, you know, if you want to mess around on your phone while I'm prepping or something like that, that's fine. But like when I get to the point where I'm ready to like interact with someone, like do their marking or whatever else, it's please, you know, put the phone down for now. Same thing with a guest in the room. So if they have a parent, a friend in the room, it's, would you just mind putting your phone down until we're done with the piercing? And it's not it's not exclusively just because of the recording issue. It's because of like distractions. You know, if somebody's on a phone and there are notifications and, you know, all these dings and stuff going off, it's going to throw me off. And as a body piercer, I kind of feel like we have 1 second to get it right. It's not a tattoo where we're sitting there for 3 hours and if we have a little like wiggly line, we can fix it or something. It's, we have one chance to do it. We're working with a lot of like precision for fine marking. We're working with sharp implements. There are some really valid safety issues why we wouldn't want to create distractions. But then, like, you know, sometimes if people are recording something, we've all seen it, we've all done it. You know, I've done it too. Like, you know, when you know that you're on camera, you ham it up a little bit. So if people are trying to create something for like, you know, Instagram or TikTok, I don't want them trying to do something like dramatic or like sensational or something in a piercing or like hamming it up or something like that, because I just don't feel like it's a safe work environment for me. So in those scenarios where I'm recording it for educational purposes, if the client requests that they can see a copy, can get a copy of that video, that's something I'm open to because it's more controlled. And I feel like it's a lot safer for me because it's just it's a camera on a tripod. I'm not thinking about it. They're not really thinking about it. But I think it's really different if there's like a person, a friend, or the client themselves trying to record it or capture content. And I just think that it creates the potential for an accident happening.
Absolutely. I mean, how many times have there been instances where, you know, a friend is filming and they want to get up and get closer or hover over or move around? Even the movement can be distracting. And there is also the increase in dramatic behavior. We know, with or without phones, we know that this is true. That's why in my own studio in Glasgow, we've never allowed guests in the piercing space unless it's for an essential reason, you know, like a personal care or translator. We don't allow extra bodies in the space because you can be talking with someone who is really up there in terms of energy and anxiety and questions and just very, very like high energy. And then you get them into the space alone and they calm right down and they're ready to go. And it's like having people around you. Friends in particular are often the absolute worst wind-up merchants. Like they're just going to make you as on edge and wound up as possible because they're your friends and they're being dicks sometimes. You know, like that's how a lot of people just have a back and forth. So part of controlling the situation to keep everyone as safe as possible sometimes involves just breaking people up for a couple of minutes where it's not essential that they're together. In your space, you have guests that come into the piercing room, so that's something that I've worked to adapt to. And generally, people are very well behaved, but still, like, there are instances that we experience from time to time where you do have to spend a surprising amount of time wrangling the extra person, and that's taking away your attention from the person who is there actually getting the service.
When I'm asking to record, there's verbal consent, but then there's also written consent. So in my piercing release form, I have all of my general liability issues, disclosing potential risks with the body piercing, all the other things that I'm legally required to include in my form. But I also include a photo release, a video release that says, if you allow me to capture content, I'm permitted to use that content for educational, for promotional reasons. Like there's a lot of consent documentation going on with that, and there's a release included in that. So if I'm the one being recorded, and let's just say, like in the good faith sense, I just want to record my piercing for a keepsake because it's an interesting life moment for me. That's one thing, kind of harmless, whatever. But then there's like the dirtier, uglier side of it, where people might want to make, I don't know, a TikTok or something, like making fun of the piercer or something like that, or editing it in a way that's inappropriate for the person. And if I didn't give my consent for that, if I didn't issue some sort of release that says like, yeah, you can use this on your page to make jokes or to pass it off in some other sense, like I think that's a kind of a violation for my trust as a professional.
So the other issue that I see with recording digital content in the studio from a client perspective and then disseminating that online is clients don't always know what they're looking at. And people watching those videos don't always know what they're looking at. And that can also be a potential for misinformation, conflicting opinions. And it conjures up a memory that I have for when I had actually not been piercing very long. I think I'd been piercing a few years. And I had just started using labret studs in nostril piercings instead of nostril screws, which we used to use, which about a third of the time the client would be back a week later with it half hanging out their nose.
Yeah.
So really not a great. And of course, I don't want to digress on nostril screws, so let's not do that because there's a spectrum of quality as it relates to them. But when I started using labret studs, the purpose of that was this is getting them a more secure fastening for their piercing. And a few months later into that process, somebody emailed threatening to sue me because they had been to another shop. I think it might have even just been a Claire's, to be honest. And they had been told by the staff there that I had used the wrong jewelry on them, that I had used lip piercing jewelry, because of course at that time, lip piercings would be the most other common placement for a labret, that I had used lip piercing jewelry on them. And I should have used a nostril screw, and it didn't really go anywhere. It was a fairly weak, what we call like a compo claim in the UK. I don't know if it's the same here, but at the time, I actually used the Association of Professional Piercers website as a resource because they actually show like the lists of different types of jewelry on there. So I went on, this was before I was even a member, I found that and I sent that to the person and I was like, well, as you can see here, this is an internationally renowned health and safety organization. And as you can see, just to reassure you, this is an appropriate style of jewelry, blah, 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 and nothing came of it. But this is an example of how people can sometimes really latch on to an idea when they've been told something's been done wrong without necessarily understanding what they're seeing. So say, for example, a client films a piercing and the piercer doesn't use clamps. There's going to be piercers online saying that's so dangerous, you've been put at severe risk because they've not used clamps. And then there's going to be other piercers that are using clamps. And there's going to be piercers saying, oh, that's so traumatic. You've been a victim of so much excess trauma in your piercing because this person's... And it's like, it's a lot of that for me, that a lot of the time the techniques are so different and varied, and safe can look like so many different things that I just don't want everything that I do at work all day being critiqued by thousands of people who don't actually understand what I'm doing.
You said a really interesting phrase, like safe can look like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
The other reason, another main reason why I don't like people to record when I'm piercing is the person watching the video can misinterpret what I'm doing, and they could unintentionally do something unsafe trying to emulate it. It just turns into one of those things where I am performing the piercing. I want to kind of represent that piercing in the best and safest way possible, and I want to control what media I am participating in. So, like, I would like to control it myself. I would like to have some say in editing and all those different things. So, like, I just don't feel comfortable with someone just having that 24/7 record everything in the world thing. It just doesn't make me feel comfortable. And I know that there's going to be a generation of like younger people, especially, that are like, well, what's the problem? And it's like, well, if you want to make that decision for your business, for your studio, for your career, that's fine. But I just don't feel comfortable with it for myself.
And that's enough. Like the fact that you're saying, I just don't feel comfortable, that's enough. We can talk ad nauseum about all the reasons it's a good idea, bad idea, but just saying no thank you to something at the offset, I think is enough. It does go both ways. For both of us, anytime we take picture or video, it's consent first, absolutely. And for me, even a hesitation is an absolute consent. If I ask a client, hey, is it okay if I get some pictures of this because this is a really interesting, whatever, and they go, well, or I'm like, well, that's not a yes. And even then, if a client seems on the fence and they're like, yeah, it's fine, I'm like, okay, well, why don't I take a couple of pictures? You can look at the pictures, and then if you're happy with them, great. And if you don't like them, I'll just go ahead and delete them. And just every step of the way, just affirming that this is optional. This isn't why you're here to get a piercing, not deal with my bullshit, So like, it really does go both ways. And I think that we just can't. I guess we can't. I just don't want us to allow that to erode.
Yeah.
To allow that trust and that back and forth
Don't
to be eroded.
normalize people
Right.
being a jerk and thinking that it's like something you can just brush off. All right, so wrapping up that and getting into like another conversation that we were having, and this one just kind of came out of nowhere. I have had a really bizarre relationship with used jewelry, worn jewelry at various stages of my career. I don't perform new piercings with used jewelry. I perform new piercings with new jewelry. That's the policy in my studio. It has been for a very, very long time. My answer as to why has changed a little bit over the years. But you have been seeing something coming up online more recently. And I think, again, it's just tied to like economic issues. But the concept, the questions about used jewelry have been coming up a little bit more frequently lately. So what does that put on your mind?
So I had been looking at secondhand clothes online, like all the clothes retail sites, and I saw that high-end gold body jewelry was being resold on some of these retail sites, and
Right.
I was
like
really
very familiar brands
right.
to us.
We don't like to mention, branding and stuff, so I'm just trying to find a way of wording it. There are websites where you can sell like secondhand designer clothes and secondhand designer jewelry, and those websites are now selling secondhand high-end body jewelry. Now, I make no judgment whatsoever of the sale of secondhand high-end body jewelry because antiques exist, okay? Vintage earrings exist. The selling of jewelry that's worn in the body secondhand is not new. I know it might set off a red flag for so many of us for when you think, oh, the hygiene, oh, the biofilm, like it's very triggering for all of us that work with bloodborne pathogens and stuff all the time. But I'm not making any judgment of that. Like, your goods are yours to sell, your money is yours to spend. So this is in no way a critique of that practice. But when I looked at it, it kind of took me by surprise. I went down a little bit of a hole, and it suddenly made me realize a lot of little offshoots that can come from that are concerning to me as a small business owner and someone that works with jewelry. And if I think this is a trend that's going to continue to grow as economic times continue to worsen. And I wanted to kind of bring awareness to some of these issues so that, similarly to how we deal with, recording in the piercing space, we're not letting an issue start to kind of snowball on us without realizing that it's problematic. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
So used jewelry for me, it's like a concept of like death by a thousand cuts, because everybody's going to have their regular clients who have bought several pieces of jewelry, spent however much money in your studio, and it's a really common conversation where they say like, "Oh, I have this thing that I bought from you, or that I've worn that, and I want to try to use it for a new piercing or something." So, like, you've heard me talk over and over and over again about like the physical layout of the studio. Like, you need to be able to have a space in your studio where you can perform safe decontamination of used jewelry, of used tools if you're reprocessing tools, all that stuff. So, those issues aside, a couple of things I really want to talk about with secondhand jewelry is like, what kind of background are you running to verify that it's their used piece of jewelry? Like, some of the scenarios that led me to having like a really firm policy of like, no, I'm not going to do that, is someone came in, they had a piece that I knew I sold, really recognizable piece, and they said, got this here. I want to use it for this new piercing. So I was like, yeah, okay, sure, why not? I can put it in a bag and I can run it through the autoclave again or whatever, perform their piercing, and then they're like, oh yeah, this is so great. This is my sister's piece that she got pierced with. And it's like, okay, I guess I didn't ask the right questions about like, is this your used piece or something? But biofilm is such an issue. If you're not familiar with biofilm, again, I want to hammer you over the head about it. Once you wear body jewelry for just more than a couple of hours, your body starts to basically like stick extracellular material, like proteins and bacteria will stick to that surface of the jewelry, will get into gem settings, will get under gemstones, in thread cavities, all kinds of stuff. And it will start to create a little protected colony of bacteria, protected in a extracellular protein layer. And it means that it might not be able to be cleaned off, or at least cleaned off easily. So if you have something like a gem setting and there's biofilm inside that setting or under that stone, and then you put it in your autoclave, you can be potentially contaminating the inside of your autoclave with like body oils and all this other stuff. So you create this whole like spiraling issue about hygiene. Just because you hit the start button on your autoclave does not mean that all bacteria in the world is destroyed. Like, you have to clean it first, you have to disinfect it first, decontaminate it first before it can be sterilized. And some used jewelry cannot be properly decontaminated in that way. So that safety issue alone is a huge deal for me, and as doubly so if it's not even their bacteria.
And of course, it's never going to be the same reprocessing a worn piece of jewelry than an initial unworn piece of jewelry, for all the reasons that you just mentioned. But it's also even more challenging because, as we'll know from examining worn pieces, they have scuff marks, they have scratch marks, they have little etchings in the surface, especially softer materials like solid gold. So the condition of the piece, as well as the gem settings and things, allows a much greater landscape for biofilm to develop. So there's a huge hygiene issue there. But from my perspective, one of the first things that jumped into my mind as a small business owner is, do clients understand, the people purchasing this jewelry understand that they have no contract and no agreement with the original seller of that piece? And I'm not so sure in all these situations. So to put it really simply, person A buys from person B. They have a sales agreement. Whatever the terms of sale are in your local area, in your country, in your state, that's your sales agreement. In some areas it's going to be stronger, weaker, but there's something there, transactions taking place between person A and B. If person B resells that to person C, then people C and B have an agreement. But person C has no agreement with person A. They have no agreement together. They have nothing. So does person C understand that if the piece of jewelry breaks that they've bought secondhand, they actually can't just take it back to the studio where they bought it and have them repair, refund, or replace the piece by default? I'm not so sure that people are aware of that, because your contract is with the person who sold you the piece of jewelry. And what I don't want to see is clients coming in, and I don't even know if clients is the right word because they're people you haven't met, people coming in with jewelry that was at some point sold in your studio to someone else and expecting to have the same terms of sale for the piece, that definitely gave me some cause for concern. And the first example that jumped to my mind was, say I went to a secondhand shop and I buy a dress, and the dress is a H&M dress or something. I take it home, I find out it's got a hole in it. I can't take that dress to H&M and say, give me a new dress or give me a refund, because I have no agreement. I've made no sales agreement with H&M. I bought the dress secondhand, right? To me, that sounds so obvious. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of that with secondhand body jewelry.
Yeah, that gets sticky in a world where body jewelry companies are being a little cavalier with how they define their sales and warranty policies. So I think a lot of the body jewelry that we buy, with it carrying that higher price tag, one of the angles of our sales pitch is to say, if you buy this piece of jewelry from us, it comes with this certain manufacturer's warranty. So if a stone falls out of a setting, the company will replace the stone. If something breaks because of a manufacturing error, if a thread fails, if a pin breaks, those are some things that can be covered under the warranty from the original seller through, our studio kind of a thing. But then it gets really murky because a lot of these jewelry companies, sometimes they make it seem just so easy, like lifetime guarantee, bam, but they don't talk about the fine print of like what falls under that lifetime warranty, because it's not 100% of issues in 100% of scenarios. So some ways that I've been bitten by that was by somebody coming in with a piece of jewelry that they did not buy from me, but they bought from a company that I stock. If they had something break and they can't bring it back to wherever they bought it from, or if they bought it on a website, or if they bought it secondhand, or whatever the issue might be, and they need to send it back to the company for a repair, companies don't take jewelry directly from a client because of the hygiene issues about biofilm and other bacteria that will most likely be on the surface of that jewelry. So what they say is, you need to do this through a studio. So sometimes people will contact my studio and say, X, Y, or Z company has said that you'll manage this return for me. And then it puts me in the scenario of like, oh, I'm sorry, like, you're not my client. You didn't purchase this piece from me. It's not as simple as I just take your piece of jewelry and drop it in a mailbox and then I'm done with that scenario. It's, I'm taking responsibility for a piece of jewelry that has value. If something happens and you can try to hold me liable for any sort of damage, if something goes missing, all these different things, now I'm supposed to be liable for a piece of jewelry that I never sold. The other issue is that jewelry needs to be decontaminated, it needs to be sterilized, and it needs to be shipped, most likely with shipping insurance. That's a lot of labor on my side. Just to decontaminate and sterilize a worn piece of jewelry is going to take probably around an hour if you're doing it properly. And if you scoff at me saying an hour, just try to think like maybe you're not doing it correctly. If somebody brings in used jewelry in my studio, I'm going to do a physical debridement with probably an alcohol wipe to start. So if there's like visible crusties on it, I'm going to put on gloves, I'm going to take an alcohol wipe, I'm going to see what comes off with just that alcohol wipe. Then it's going to go in an enzymatic foam bath in a little disposable cup, some enzymatic foam, and it might need to sit in there for 20 minutes or an hour to soften up any sort of like dried material, especially like in a gem setting or something like that, like crusties under a gem in a gem setting is very difficult to clean out. Makeup, things that are like, oily or chemical based. Then I'm going to have to take that piece of jewelry and then I'm going to have to run it through an ultrasonic with some more enzyme solution to make sure that I'm getting rid of anything that might be in a little cavity or something like that once it's softened. Then I have to rinse it, then I have to autoclave it, then I have to package it, and then I have to ship it. All that stuff is a huge amount of time. And if it's something where I didn't even sell the piece, like where is my responsibility in this as a professional? Why is it my shop's responsibility to manage that return for a third party? It gets so sticky for me.
So this is an area that makes me like at white hot with rage, as you know, because
I've heard about it plenty of times.
I've had so many instances, still so many instances, despite having talked openly about this, despite having public policies on my website and all of this kind of stuff. It still pops up from time to time where a person I've never met will come into the business with a piece of jewelry I've never sold and said, so and so told me that you would just take care of all of this for me. And at this point, I'm a lot blunter than I used to be. And I'm just like, well, they're mistaken, because we've never had that conversation. I've never actually spoke to this person. Pretty clear on my website, I don't do that. So, I'm a lot less. I used to do a lot more to try and, just be accommodating and try my best to, because I think that this is the issue I have with this. There's a huge amount of pressure put on people that are newer in the industry and small businesses to just, air quotes, be cool.
Yeah.
Just be cool
Just be
with
helpful.
it.
It'll come back to you in the end.
Yeah.
Karma.
But what you're asking is, you're asking me to do the most dangerous job in my studio. Reprocessing something that has been contaminated is arguably one of the most dangerous jobs you can do in the studio in terms of the risk of cross-contamination. You want me to do the administrative work, and bearing in mind that the majority of shipping I have to do involves importing and exporting. That stuff doesn't vanish when you're doing a return on repair. It's still there. I've had to pay import taxes to receive repaired jewelry that has no commercial value. And all of these things, you're having to ship stuff with insurance. You have to pay for that and be reimbursed by the client or have them pay in advance. And then if the piece goes missing and you think, well, it's okay, it's insured, you're the one that now has to make an insurance claim. Does anyone enjoy making insurance claims? You could be dealing with this for months and months and months, and you didn't even make the sale and you don't even know the person.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a perfect example of like, sometimes it's better to just have someone be mad at you for 5 minutes than be dealing with something for 5 months.
Yeah.
And what makes me so angry about it is the erasure of labor. Because, and I'm not going to mention any specific companies here, but think of the big companies, like the big companies that are, turning over tens of millions of dollars of sales a year. They could 100% have a decontamination room if they wanted to. They could build one this weekend and they would have a decontamination
Wouldn't even
room.
be that complicated to do it, really.
But they could do that, but they choose not to do that because they very smartly know that it's a ball ache to have to deal with all those repairs. They don't want people just sending them shit. And that's why they don't do it. It's not because they can't. It's not because they lack the skill, the money, the knowledge. It's because they're like, no thank you. So they need independent studios to manage that crappy job and do that work. And so I think if you're in a situation where you're relying on little independent studios to take on that administrative work that has nothing to do with them, I think the best thing to do would be to like have a relationship with those studios that has some kind of professional agreement around the handling of those goods. You could reach out to a small business and say, hey, I'm from X company. We have a few clients in your country that need to do returns. Can you please handle them for us? If you can handle them for us, we will take responsibility for any packages that go missing, and we will, reimburse you with a store credit to the value of the hours of time that you spent doing this. Because if we're talking about a credit or reimbursement of labor, that's just a labor for labor exchange, because it's a jewelry maker who's using their labor to make jewelry, and it's a piercer who's using their labor to decontaminate jewelry, and we're just doing a trade. I think that would be way more equitable. And I've said that before, that I think that would be a good idea. But instead, this system of just kind of leaving little businesses out to dry and saying, yeah, they'll take care of it for you. So because they know you'll look like a dick when you say no. And for years I dealt with that. And now I'm like, do you know what? I'm just going to look like a dick. I'll just look like a dick. I would rather that than have to deal with another one of these situations. And so when I saw the resale thing, that was the first thing that came to my mind is, do these people that are buying the jewelry secondhand, do they understand they don't have a lifetime warranty? They don't have a purchase agreement. They don't have any. All they have is the secondhand agreement from the person they bought it from. That's all they have. And In some of these sales, the person selling the jewelry will include a receipt. Now, the point of a receipt, I think, is to establish that the jewelry is genuine and that they really paid that much money for it and to authenticate it, which makes sense. But I think people buying the jewelry could misinterpret that as an indication that, oh, I can take this jewelry and I can go back to this place that I bought it. But that's not the case. You don't have any legal right to do that. And additionally, turning up at a business with a receipt for an item you didn't buy in some areas and in some circumstances can also be considered fraud. So it brings up these issues where sometimes you'll see a behavior advancing and snowballing, and you'll wonder if anyone has actually stopped and understood what it is they're agreeing to and what it is they're getting themselves into. So I just want people to know that when they're buying secondhand jewelry, totally fine to do that, but it's the same as buying anything secondhand.
I don't want to be as cavalier to say, oh, it's just totally fine to buy. Like I get the point that you're
Yeah.
making. The point, like my brain is immediately going to start with the safety issues, and then like you're getting into the logistic issues, which is also terrifying in a sense when you really start to think about it as like a business person. Like again, like you said, it's these small studios, maybe startup studios, newer studios, and maybe they feel self-conscious. Like if I don't agree to this or something, that a company is going to box me out, or like the client won't come back or something, even though like they weren't your client to begin with. But it just gets so complicated. Like I've tried to be like the good guy in these scenarios where I've tried to send something back to a company because like I deal with that company, even though I didn't deal with the client. But then I was on the hook for insurance, and like the repair wasn't covered by the warranty, so there was a labor fee to it, and it's like, why is my shop credit card getting charged for that? Like I didn't sell the piece or something. So it's really complicated. I really want studios to think about the decontamination risks, especially if you're one of those like disposable studios. You cannot take used body jewelry that's covered in somebody's biological debris, oils, biofilm, crusties. You can't just take that and throw it in your Statum or your InBio, whether it's in a package or not. You can't just do that, because then you're potentially contaminating the inside of your unit, which is going to create all kinds of issues. You have to understand the limits of this stuff, and it's not a magic button that makes all of the biological material disappear. You have to properly decontaminate it, and you have to understand how to do that. And if you don't understand it, then just blanket. You should just be saying something as simple as, new piercings are with new jewelry only, and I'm sorry, we can't facilitate a repair for jewelry that our studio did not sell.
Right. And if you are newer in the industry and you're feeling that pressure of, I need to just be cool with this because, this is a big, impressive company that I really want to work with and they've asked this of me, just don't feel that you need to go along with it and be part of it if it makes you uncomfortable. If you're happy to do it and you've got nothing else that you want to do and you want to take on the extra liability, the extra risk, the extra administrative work, I'm not going to, try and stop you from doing that. But I think that sometimes we can be put under pressure and we're told it's just part of community. And I'm saying that's bullshit. It's not part of community if it's inequitable and one side is being put at a significant risk or disadvantage than the other. So don't worry about it if you're scared about looking like a dick, because I look like a dick on a fairly regular basis. And, I'm still here, and it turns out it's mostly fine.
Yeah, and like you and I have toured facilities of like some of these major body jewelry companies. We've seen the amount of money that they put into their machinery and their safety equipment and their staff and all these things. Like again, millions of dollars of investment that like dwarfs the investment that goes into even like really well designed and really well equipped studios. It's not complicated to make a decontamination area in a business. You need basically a sink, and then you need one unit for decontamination, one unit for sterilization. Like there's a wide variety of things that can fall into those categories. So if there are body jewelry companies out there that are frequently accepting repairs on worn jewelry, which is essentially all of them, think about putting in the investment in your facility to have a decontamination room that protects your employees on site. And I think that could potentially make things a little bit easier long term for the end user, the client, the body piercing client, getting their repairs facilitated.
So yeah, I think that's kind of hitting on all the concerns that we had about these different issues. Is that sometimes technology and modern behaviors, they change so quickly and they evolve and develop so quickly that sometimes we have to come up with policies on the back foot, like to try and catch up with this stuff that's happening around us. And this is an issue that I've had with jewelry in this issue for many years. So I'm already solid in my position. But if you're not, just take this as an opportunity to think, do I have a system for this? Do I have a policy for this? And don't be afraid to stand up for that policy, because other businesses, they're standing up for themselves as well. And you can do that. It is allowed. So you have my permission to be a little bit of a dick.
When we say these things out loud, which are part of our studios that have this massive level of care, yeah, it does make us sound like pricks, because a lot of times we're explaining how and why we say no. When I think a lot of people don't talk about that, they talk about how they say yes and how they can be all things for all people. But I don't think that that's reality. And I think it kind of does people a disservice, especially long term, if you don't kind of talk about how the sausage is made sometimes. Like, we're not just pulling these policies out of the air because we're lazy. Like, we have crafted these policies because we've been bitten by these scenarios so many times. So if you're a piercer out there or a studio owner out there, and you're kind of like a little bit newer to this and you're starting to encounter some of these scenarios for the first time, like, trust your gut, do what you think is appropriate for your business, for your career, but like really start to sit down and write out policies for this stuff, so that when these scenarios happen, you have a better answer than like, I don't know, or maybe feeling pressured or panicking in the scenario. Like, sit down, think through it, and write down the policies and share them with your staff members, share them with your colleagues, so that these things can get a little bit easier, especially when you have to say no sometimes.
I don't think we sound like pricks at all. I think we sound totally reasonable. Listen, I'm gonna summarize in a way more cunty way than you, right? If someone with no fucking money, with no money, like a broke ass bitch like me, can get enough little fucking coppers to rub together to set up a space in which jewelry can be contaminated, a massive corporation can totally do that if they want. Decontaminated. A massive corporation could do that if they wanted to, but they don't want to because it's a hassle. And you're also allowed to not want to if it's a hassle. So to me, it's like, how is that different?
Yeah. I don't want to make it all about like money, because it's not about money. But like, a lot of these things are just about like appreciating the labor and the care that goes into it.
It's about maintaining an ecosystem that supports you and recognizing that if you want to spend 80% of your money on the internet, which you can totally do, that brick and mortar businesses around you that you need for hands-on support will shut down over time. Yeah. That's just a fact. It's not judgment. It's not an opinion. If they're not getting the majority of what you're spending, they will contract and shut down. And then you will be without that service. So if you're okay with that, fine. If you're not okay with it, try and support those businesses.
Right. Yeah. And like, if you want to handle maybe like a repair or something like that, it is appropriate to charge a small service fee, especially if it's not your client. If you have to handle this and that and shipping and all this stuff, it's all time. And so it's like, if you are handling these scenarios, maybe try to like track with a log how much time you actually put into facilitating that. You might be shocked to see how many hours goes into something as simple as, oh, can you just send this back to a company for me? It's a lot of time and effort to do it properly.
Yeah.
Blech. All right, anyway, we're going to stop talking about this right now. My next conference is going to be the Benelux conference coming up in just a few weeks, and then shortly after that, UK APP conference and beyond. So if you're going to be at any of those conferences, come say hi to me, because I will be there.
I won't be there.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Not for like a reason, just I'm just not going.
You're not allowed to be there.
They would let me in if I wanted to go.
No, because the jewelry companies don't like you now because you've created enemies.
They won't let me go.
They won't let you go now. You have to facilitate their repairs for studios that.
What if I just wear a big fake mustache and I go, hello?
I'm Mr. Snrub.
Yeah, then they'll be like, okay.
We're gonna stop talking.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Peace.
And remember, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell you gonna love somebody else? Can I get an amen in here? Amen. All right, now let the music play.
For more information about the show, visit piercingwizardpodcast.com or like Piercing Wizard Podcast on Facebook. For more info about your host, visit precisionbodyarts.com or search Ryan PBA on Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr. If you enjoy the show, you can subscribe on iTunes, Apple Podcast, and Google Play. Music by Benny B. Blanco. Show copyright 2017, Precision Body Arts LLC, all rights reserved.